Welcome to my video lecture series in web development using Vue.js. This is Professor Janus Raymond Tan from the College of Computing and Engineering. For this video lecture, we will cover the topics about the attribute binding. Throughout this video, we will discuss what is attribute binding, what is a template, and an example application. What is attribute binding? Attribute binding is connecting data to the attributes of your HTML elements. It is a method or way we will use in order to display contents in our HTML elements from the data, which is the model we defined from our Vue instance. Now, to make it simple, so when we say attribute binding, let's say for example, inside your HTML, you have an image tag. Okay, an image tag has an src attribute. So if you want to put value dynamically using the Vue instance inside the src attribute of the image element, okay, so we will use a vbind directive, which means from our data model defined inside our Vue instance in main.js, we will get the value of our data and we will assign that value inside the src attribute of the image tag. So that's the idea of attribute binding. It is used to perform dynamic rendering in an HTML page by updating the data or the model of the Vue instance. So based from our previous lesson, so in our Vue instance, we have a view, which is the element or the root element, and we have the model, which is the data. Okay. So this will be our product app demo. Now, to illustrate the use of attribute binding, a coding demo will be used. We will continue doing our product app from our previous lesson. So for our starting code, consider the given structure of our index.html. So this will be our index.html. So later on, I will discuss what are the purpose of using this one, div class product, product image, and so on. Then in our main.js, we will put values inside our model, which is the data property. Okay, so inside data, we will define product with socks as the value and image having a string for which represents your URL of the image. Okay, that will be displayed. So note that the image URL or address depends on the file structure of our project. Okay, so in this example, if you will trace the folder, okay, where vmsax green JPEG resides, it is under the assets folder. Okay, so we want an image to show up on our page, but we need it to be dynamic. We want to be able to update that image in our data and have the image automatically update on the page. Since our src attribute is what pulls the image into this element, we'll need data to be bound to src so that we can dynamically display an image based on the data at that time. When we talk about data binding in Vue, we mean that the place where it is used or displayed in the template is directly linked or bound to the source of the data, which is data object inside the Vue instance. In other words, the host of the data is linked to the target of the data. In this case, our data is hosted by the data property of our Vue instance, and we want to target that data from our src. So again, the idea, this product and this image, okay, so this image property specifically of our data model, so yung value nito, kailangan nating i-bind or i-connect dito sa src. Okay, so meaning to say, it's just like we wanted to put this particular URL inside the src attribute of our image. Okay, but since we are using Vue.js, we want it to be dynamic. Instead of directly putting the URL of the image here, okay, which is not dynamic, may static siya, we will put the value inside our Vue instance. And Vue.js will be the one to bind this value inside our image tag. Okay, so this will be the one to use in our example, so that we will be able to connect the view instance to our image tag. So we will use the vbind directive. So when we say directive, it is always prefixed with a v. Okay, so v dash, then the name of your directive, which is bind, then colon, followed by the attribute available for this particular element. So make it sure that the one you are binding, okay, just like this one, src, is an attribute of this tag. So if this is not an attribute of this tag, it will not work. Okay, so this will be our code for this one, which means image, sir. How come image is the thing we need to put here inside our vbind directive? Remember, image is the name of our property here inside our data. So what will happen is i-interpolate yung value neto. Again, we will not do interpolation using the mustache syntax because we are using a directive. When you are using directive, no need to put mustache binding. Okay, so that's the idea. So to bind the value of image in our data object to the src in our image tag, we'll use vbind directive. Now if we execute the program, this should be our output. Again, it's just like typing the URL on your src statically. Okay, so ganun yung mangyayari. So later on, pakikita ko sa inyo yung mangyayari sa inspect element ng browser. Now, we will go with the coding demo. Okay, to start our project, let us first consider the project folder. So in my case here, this is our project. Okay, inside our project folder, I have a subfolder which is images. Inside this subfolder is the two image, which is the socks blue and the socks green. So we will be able to display this one later on. So inside the project folder also, we have the index.html, which contains the structure of our HTML page, and the main.js, which contains our view instance definition, a style.css for some styling, and the Vue.js itself as a local file to be included in our HTML. So let us open the index.html and the main.js. Okay. Okay. So inside the main.js, as you can see here, again, this is our root element. So how can I say that this is the root element? Because it has the ID app, which is defined in our element having the hashtag app. Okay. So sir, why do you need to use this one? Navbar, product, product image, product info, where it came from. So this came from our style.css. So I will not go discussing about this one. Okay, this is not the core topic of our discussion. So you can have a copy of this again. So I will actually the copy of this code is included on your lecture notes that I will give you and be uploaded on our LMS. Okay. So let us go back again discussing. So ibig sabihin, sa loob ng root element natin, we have this particular div class which is product. It will perform the formatting based on the style. Okay. So dito, yun yung susundin niya. Then followed by this one, inside that is a product image class. Again, from the style, i-implement niya yung styling, and same as this one. Okay. Now, before we put values in our HTML file, let us first consider doing the working with the values on our data, okay, or the model. So let us define product as our property. Okay, this should be an object, name value pair, the name is product, and the value is, again, as an example, socks. Okay. Then aside from the product, we wanted that the image or the URL of the image should appear inside our image tag later on. Okay. So to show that later on, of course, we need to put an image property. Again, this is depending upon you. The naming is depending upon you. This is just an example, but make it sure relative to its purpose. So the image will contain our image URL. So since in our project folder, we have the subfolder for images. Let's say for example, we want to show the green socks, okay? We'll just put the dot. So kailangan natin lumabas nung uh, folder kung nasan si main.js. Then go inside the subfolder named images. So this is one, nasa loob na tayo niyan. And we can access now the VM, let's say VM socks dash green. So we will make this appear later on in our page. So save. So of course, by using or by browsing this in the browser, we will not see anything pa. Okay? So applying lang yung navbar pero there's no anything to be shown here because we don't have any binding pa na ginagawa. Okay? So now, let us show the product image. So the product image should be shown inside our div. Okay? So to show an image is to use the image tag and the src. Okay? Again, by typing this one directly on your page, on your HTML page, is the same thing na mangyayari later on. So tanggalin ko muna siya dito. Save ko to. Save. Right click. Open in browser. Yan. So ganito yung gusto natin mangyari. Kaya lang, again, what happened here is static yung src. Meaning to say, we will not be able to manipulate this using JavaScript. So for us to be able to make this dynamic and to make this can be manipulated in our JavaScript, it should be defined inside our view.js. So let us go back with main. Balik natin yung kanina. Save again natin. Then, how can we show the value of src? Again, we need to use the v-bind followed by a colon followed by the attribute of your image tag, which is src. So now, how can we show here the value of our image? So instead of copy pasting the content, you need to just copy the name of your property. Then that will be pasted here inside your src. So Vue.js will be the one to interpret this one. So ganun siya kadali. Okay? So again, let us close muna yung browser to make it sure na bago siya. Open a new browser. Yan. So see? So that is same effect nung tinype natin directly yung URL. So if we inspect this one, you will see, okay, kung ano yung ginawa ni Vue.js. Ang ginawa ni Vue.js, binind niya yung image natin, okay, galing dun sa Vue.js natin, Vue instance, papunta sa src. So that is how the Vue.js did its job. Okay, so binind niya yung src, the image tag, using the image property of our data model. Okay, so that's it. So that's what happened. Okay, so let us go back here. So inside our product info, let's say for example, we wanted to display naman yung product using an h1. So we can do that here inside this product info using an h1. And this time, since we will not do binding, it is interpolation. We will not manipulate the attribute of the h1. We will just display the value here. So no need to do binding. So inside the mustache template natin, we can put the name of our property, which is product, so that this word will appear below or beside our image later on. So this will be product. Okay, so whatever again yung nakasulat dito, that will be displayed. So again, go back tayo dito, F5, then that will be your product. Now for the additional usage of vbind, we can use vbind again here if you want to bind alt text data to the same img element. So if you add this in our data, we can bind that to the alt attribute like so. In both of these cases, we've used the syntax vbind, and after the colon, we've stated which attribute we're binding the data to, src and alt in this case. Now whenever the image and alt text data changes, that updated data will remain linked to the src and alt attributes. So magdadagdag tayo ngayon ng alt text sa ating data model, and we will bind this alt text in the alt attribute of the image tag. Okay, so let us see how to do that. Same way, additionally, we have this following shorthand. So when we say shorthand, there is a very commonly used feature in Vue. Because it's so common, there's a shorthand for vbind, and it's just a colon. So instead of typing v-bind after the before the colon, we can only use, or we can use common to make it shorter. Okay, so that's the same effect with vbind. So let us now discuss the additional usage of vbind. So this time we will add another property, which is alt text, and we will show this alt text in our image tag again using the alt attribute of the image tag. So we will put a pair of socks. Okay. Then for us to be able to bind this one in the image tag, again, we will put v-bind. Okay, then what attribute? That is alt. Okay, then followed by equal sign, then the name of our property added, which is alt text. So copy this one, paste it here. So save. Okay, and that's it. Then again, I will show you that if we will omit this vbind, just like the other one, yan, to show you the shorthand for vbind directive, isabay na natin, F5, ayun siya. Okay, so that will be our demo for the additional usage and the shorthand for the vbind directive. Template using vhtml. We have learned in the previous topic how to get an output in the form of text content on the screen. In this topic, we will learn how to get an output in the form of HTML template on the screen. To understand this, let us consider an example and see the output in the browser. So as you can see in the slide, we have the following code structure for our HTML. So we have two H1s and a single div inside our root element, which is the app. Okay, we are displaying first name and last name as the label, and since we are using mustache binding or interpolation, it means first name, last name, and HTML content are defined inside our Vue instance. So for the Vue instance, suppose we want to show the HTML content on the page. If we happen to use it with interpolation, an example with double curly brackets, this is what we will get in the browser. Iyan. Okay. So again, this is our Vue instance. We will define first name, last name with these values and HTML content. Inside the HTML content, we will define an HTML code enclosed in double quotation mark. But again, if we will browse this one in our HTML or in our browser, this is what you get. Okay, so the HTML itself will not be rendered. Okay, the reason is using interpolation, okay, it is not applicable for interpreting HTML code. Instead, for you to be able to interpret this HTML template, okay, you will use the vHTML directive. So not vbind but vHTML directive. If we see the HTML content is displayed the same way we have given in the variable HTML content, this is not we want. We want it to be displayed in a proper HTML content on the browser. For this, we will have to use vHTML directive. The moment we assign vHTML directive to the HTML element, Vue.js knows that it has to output it as HTML content. Okay? So this is what will be going to happen. So ito yung mangyayari sa kanya. Inside our div, okay, instead of interpolation just like this one, take a look at it. Instead of using the mustache binding, okay, so for us to be able to render HTML code, okay, using binding, we need to use vHTML directive. Then inside that vHTML directive, you just need to put the name of the data property, which is HTML content as defined in our main.js. Okay, so if you will do that, this will be your output. So let us consider the coding demo. Now for the coding demo of vHTML, let us first consider putting values in our data property. So based on our example, so we will define first name equivalent to Ria, last name equivalent to Sing, and HTML content equivalent to this particular code structure. So we have a div, we have an h1, we have view JS template, then a closing h1 and a closing div. Save. Okay, so inside our index.html, so let us show the first name and last name inside an h1. So put labels, first name, use mustache binding. So get the value from the data property. So first name is defined again here. So kukunin natin yan. So using mustache binding, it will be displayed in our h1. So same goes with the last name. Let's copy this one. Last name. Last name. Now, let us display the image tag using a div. So let us try doing the mustache binding, which is the, alam na naman natin na mali. Okay? So let us try what will happen to show you lang kung anong effect. So save this one, right click, open in browser. So this is your output, which is actually, that's wrong. So again, it is not rendered as an HTML code. It is rendered as a string. So for us to be able to render this as an HTML code, again, what you need to do is to use vHTML directive. So equals, so HTML content, the data property we defined again inside our main. Ito, kunin natin siya. Then this one, paste it here. Then again, we don't need to do this one anymore. Okay, because HTML content yung kailangan display, mustache binding will not work. Okay, so save F5. Then that will be your output. And that's it. In summary, we could say that Vue.js uses vbind directive to connect data to the attributes of your HTML elements. Vue.js is able to bind the contents of the properties defined in the model or data of a Vue instance. Vue.js provides a way to render HTML code defined in the Vue instance using the v-html directive. For this lesson's activity, using the given code of the product app from the previous lesson as the starting code, add a link as a property of your data object with the value this one, okay, and use vbind to sync it up with an anchor tag in your HTML. Clicking the link should open a new browser tab to show the contents of the link. Hint, you'll be binding to the href attribute. So this should be your output. Okay? So dadagdagan lang natin yung code kanina, and this will be the code or the additional text, which is a link to the given URL. Okay? So that's it for now. Thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed this video. For inquiries, feel free to post your questions in our group chat. You can check our LMS for the copies of the program code in this video uploaded using our lecture notes. And in our next video, we will discuss all about conditional rendering. So don't forget to visit the links in the references section for more information about this lesson. See you in the next video.